So welcome everybody. Welcome to GeogLive 19. Welcome to GeogLive 19 Rivers. It's really great to have you if you're joining us via the recording or joining us live today as well. We'll be recording this and it will be posted on YouTube later. As I've just mentioned, it's quite helpful to have cameras off and mute on, please, if you can, because that's really helpful for us so we don't distract any of the speakers. We'd love you to put into the chat, though, where you are in the world. Where are you? Geography is very important to us in a session like this, so do tell us where you are. Tell us maybe your interest in the topic today. Tell us maybe if you teach rivers or you're currently teaching rivers, which river are you actually teaching about? So do use the chat, do ask questions in the chat. There's a real brains trust of people here today who can answer your questions. That's the real joy of doing this live. Do chat to anybody via the chat today. So let us know where you are. Do use the Twitter handle, the X handle as well, at EYPPC_GA. It will be really good for you to give us some feedback and to give us a sense of who you are and where you're from as well. Give us some feedback that way. Just remember today, the 3 contributors will be sharing their own ideas and work with you on the understanding that if you do use it in other contexts, you tell people about the GA, tell people about the authors of the information as it's presented. Please do acknowledge the source that you got this from. So you're welcome to use the material, but just let us know if you're using it, and the copyright resides with the contributors and with the early years and primary phase committee. I'm Anthony Barlow. I work at the University of Roehampton in southwest London, and I teach geography on the undergraduate programme. We've got a PGCE tutor, Dr. Tessa Willey, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Primary Geography Journal in a moment. We've got Dr. Margaret Mackintosh, who's going to start us off with this thinking about rivers today, with a real focus on something I'm very passionate about myself, graphicacy. Then we've got straight from the classroom, Jen Lomas, who's going to be thinking about including children with SEND in rivers topics. So really looking forward to that one as well. And finally, to finish off, I'm going to be introducing a good colleague who we've worked with at the university, Robyn Shaw, who works at the South East Rivers Trust, looking at a very specific study of local rivers and the Beverley Brook here in southwest London. And all the way through, do chat, do share, do contribute throughout the time with us via the chat, please. And really helpfully, we've also got from one of our contributors, we've got this amazing Canva, this amazing QR code that you can have a look at now. Thanks so much to Sophie for creating this, for putting this together, this really exciting suggested book list for you. So do have a look at that throughout and have a look at the suggestions of books that might be useful for you. Lots of inspiration, lots of ideas there. So just a moment to have a look at that, but we will return to that at the end as well. A reminder as well, we have the Geographical Association Conference, which occurs this year at Easter from the 4th to the 6th of April, and that's at the University of Manchester. We'd love to see you there. There will be lots and lots of early years, primary, Key Stage 3, 4 and 5 presentations as well that you can really learn from. Experts in the field will be speaking at that conference, geography conference, that will be really well worth going to, and exhibition as well. Lots of maps and atlases and globes and things like that that you can buy at the exhibition alongside that. But without further ado, I'll pass over to Tessa. Thank you, Tessa.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anthony, and lovely to see everybody. And last time that we all met for GeogLive, I was letting you know about this upcoming version, an edition of Primary Geography, and its focus on kind geographies. And I'm delighted to say that it's very much available now, and hopeful that, in fact, many of you will have already started enjoying and engaging in it and benefiting from its many wonderful and very timely articles that are in it. So Sharon Witt, who is who is here today, which is wonderful, and many authors actually from this edition are here with us today. But Sharon's done a fantastic, superlative job of bringing together some really inspiring and important articles from a wide and diverse range of educators and authors on a very eclectic collection of different issues, with this underlying really critical theme of kindness and care. And I've listed the articles for you there just to give you an idea of what we've got. Really great range. We've got how to conduct random acts of geographical kindness, something that we all need to do on a regular basis. We've got an article, Geography from the Ground Up, on baby geographies, so very appropriate as we were seeing one of our babies, Rory, a primary geography baby, but looking at it from their perspective. We've got a wonderful interview between Ben Ballin, one of our editorial board members, who's in conversation with Michael Rosen. So we're really excited about that, talking about a project which blends literacy and geography with personal and family histories. So I really urge you to have a look at that. It's wonderful. A really timely as well article on racism and the impact of that on the mental health of young children, and considering what would happen, what would it be like if racism vanished for a day. And then we've got a wonderful article as well on what stories we can tell through local inquiries. Paula Owens has done a wonderful article with a colleague there on local inquiries and those stories. And Helen Clark, who's also here today, has we've moved on from pigeons to crows and looking at relational geography and kinship. So there's a great article there. We have an article on Ukrainian refugees and bringing of worlds together, one on animated geographies and the liveliness of all geographical entities, not just thinking about our usual suspects, but thinking about the liveliness of all of those. And then our interview is a really powerful and empowering interview with the artist Paul Harfleet, which explores kindness and difference with nature. So I really urge you to have a good look at that and to really engage with it. It's all available as well online, along with a wealth of additional resources that we've got. And as ever, we love feedback to hear about what works well for you, what we would like more of, what we could provide more of. So please do keep in touch on that. I'll pop my email address in the chat after I finished, and we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So that's on primary geography. Anthony, could you just pop on that? That's great. That's lovely. Thank you. And these are just some specific resources on rivers. The GA shop has got some really great publications to support your planning and teaching. As you can see here, we've got In the Know and the water cycle and fieldwork equipment and data collection for using with rivers, investigating rivers, investigating water, and of course, local field work, locational knowledge, progression in field work experiences, and so on. So there's lots on field work related to all of this work. Lots of additional free resources as well on the GA site, so do have a search for them and have a look around the site for them. And a big thank you to the GeogLive team for this opportunity to talk about primary geography, our journal that we're so passionate about, and also the myriad of resources that there are available from the GA for you to support you in your planning and teaching. So thank you, Anthony, from me, and over to the main event.
Thank you so much, Tessa. Really do appreciate it. And just a reminder to kind of tie in with that thought there from Tessa, there is a GeogLive 20 coming up on the 24th of April 2024. So do put that date in your diary, 5 p.m. on a Wednesday. So the main event, as I said, as Tessa said, over directly to good friend and colleague, Dr. Margaret Mackintosh. Welcome, Margaret. You might be muted, Margaret.
Okay. Mike, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Good. I'm playing around with a laptop and an iPad, and I'm not very good at either. Right, visualization is a very important part of geography. Now, when children are learning about rivers, how do they actually visualize them? And do we want children, primary age children, to focus mainly on the big picture, the overview, or the small picture, the details, if there isn't time or opportunity for both? My choice would be the big picture. So how do they learn to see something as big as a river? They need to learn what river environments are, river features, what they look like, big and small, urban and rural, at home and abroad. And fieldwork can, by and large, obviously provide the small, the local picture. But obviously, pupils won't experience everything firsthand this way through fieldwork. So we need to help them appreciate the big picture by using pictorial images of many sorts. And in my opening slide, obviously, there's an urban river photo, there's a remote Hebridean river estuary, there's a bit of sculpture, and there's two very different paintings of rivers, all helping children to visualize rivers. So we're helping them to develop graphicacy skills, to become graphicate, which for children, especially for our visual thinkers, visual learners, is as important as being literate, numerate, and orate or articulate. So important, it's been referred to as the fourth ace in the pack. And alongside those things we've heard of rather too much, literacy, numeracy, oracy. And being graphicate is a life skill, a very important life skill. Next slide, please, Anthony. In geography, graphicacy is essentially the essential pictorial communication of spatial information. Or another way, communication of spatial information that cannot be conveyed adequately by verbal and numerical means. Next one. We use photos from eye level to vertical or bird's eye perspective. We use satellite images. We use films, video, paintings, plans, rose diagrams and other diagrams, models, globes, atlases, some bar charts, and lots of maps and things. Lots of pictorial resources help children to become graphicate and are part of graphicacy. And obviously, I've started with wonderful Google Earth. How do we manage without it? The last slide and focused on Kidby Bridge. I'll say more about that later. This one zooms out to show a wider setting to put Kidby Bridge, which I've coloured in red, in context. It crosses the River Trent in North Lincolnshire, just before the Trent flows into the Humber. Next one. Out further still. It's a bit cluttered because I've done a lot of labelling. I've named places, I've named rivers, geographical features, but it just shows the potential of things that children can learn to visualise using Google Earth. Things that are much, much harder, obviously, to explain in words. Pictures are fantastic, graphicacy essential. So these three images I've used so far help children to visualise the River Trent and much more in a pictorial context that they can't get, I don't think they can get from a map. But why have I started here? The next one, I can't actually see which one you're on, Anthony, because I've got two different things going. Have you got the, I've got two copies of the same one.
I think you have, yeah.
Skip to the next one then, please. Yeah, so I've started here because of a comment a year 5, 6 pupil made in her strong Humberside accent while walking across the bridge in the photo. There's water on both sides. And it was absolute amazement. This year 5, 6 pupil living in Scunthorpe, close to the River Trent, close to the River Humber, and amazed that there was water on both sides. And it reveals one issue or misconception that a graphicacy approach can avoid where fieldwork might not. especially for children who've never actually walked across a bridge. In river fieldwork, the river, the landscape, the environment is seen mostly from eye level. But an elevated viewpoint helps, in fact, I think is essential for visualization and for understanding the relationship, in this case, between the bridge, the river, and the environment. So when I took children on fieldwork, I tried to include a bridge. We tried to walk across it, and we used lots of graphicacy resources. This is a slightly elevated view of Kidby Bridge. Next slide. This is what I would call the fieldwork view, the eye level view of Kidby Bridge. We've got various views, various distances, and the bottom left picture shows the footpath that we walked along and which Kathleen stood on when she made her exclamation, "Water on both sides." But that obviously was useful to Kathleen, but let's look at the next one, how we can go further. Take an elevated view, again, courtesy of Google Earth. Got different views of the bridge to almost a vertical view in the top right corner, not quite, but almost. We can certainly see that there's water on both sides. Next one. Going on from those pictures makes it much easier, I think, for children to understand the various other pictorial elevated views, bird's eye views or vertical perspective. The distant view of the River Trent flowing up the picture, flowing northwards almost, flowing westwards, into the Humber. It is northwards, into the Humber. Two quite simple to understand maps of the area, can easily be related to the Google Earth picture. Kidby Bridge marked in the top right-hand one with the little red blob. And then the much more conventionalized OS map. I would argue that the progression from the Google Earth picture, the two maps, distant one, close-up one, and then the OS map makes understanding of the OS map much, much simpler, much more likely. The next one. Can I just check that you've got the one that says, I've got a picture of two women on a bench, Anthony?
That's the one.
Yeah, because I can't see those. Right. More, sorry. From this misconception of the concept of bridge, more confusion was over the concept of flow. And another example of how confusing and misunderstood ordinary or everyday versus geographical use of words can be, and where graphicacy can help. This is an image of a bridge over the River Otter in Devon, which incidentally has beavers living in it. We've got the start of the river. The ordinary language is start. In geography, we use source. Child's misconception, that red stuff that comes out of a bottle made from tomatoes. Spring, confusion with the season, spring. Finish or end, confusion with the geographical term mouth and estuary, but to a child, mouth is a facial feature. And then flow or current. And the next slide illustrates the misconception of current. Children were asked to draw a picture of a river, and then they talked about it and did some labeling. And this child said there are currents, Kurrent, in the river. She knew the word current. It was an everyday word, but to her, a current was something you eat. It wasn't anything to do with flow. So important to ask the children, as in the last slide, where has the water come from? Where is the water going to? and quite useful to play something like poo sticks, or ask if we put a stick in one side of the bridge, where will it flow to? Will it flow under the bridge, or will it flow away from the bridge? Which side of the bridge do we put it in? And the children were asked if they got in a boat. When we were talking about flow, when we got into a boat, if we got into a boat and went with the flow, where would we go to? Next slide. We'd get to the end of the river, some of the children replied, not just one, several of them. And how would we know when we got to the end of the river? And these were year 5, 6 children still. There'd be a wall across. And this particular example, these children live in Exmouth, right by the sea, right by the River Exe, flowing into the sea. And they thought when they got to the end of the river, there'd be a wall across. They'd been asked to do a drawing of a river, and a lot of them drew the dumbbell model of a river. They knew their visualization was of a dumbbell. It started from the source, flowed along the river, and it flowed into the sea. I think on the last slide, it also, you'll be able to see this when you look, if you look at the recording, the sea was a sort of half a dumbbell. I got lost where I was up to, but never mind. This raises the question of where the fieldwork is taking place. Because I think in most cases, we tend to do our fieldwork in the rural environment. And certainly the children's drawings very much showed rivers flowing through countryside. Not a single child drew an urban river, which was quite concerning, shall we say. In this particular image here, we've got lots of fish, we've got children playing football, we've got lots of rabbits having a picnic. So that obviously the children were asked, could the river flow through a town? Could it flow through a city? And the reply was yes, in different countries, Italy or France. Don't know about England. Little streams can, but not sure about rivers. Think they can't. So it's all these sorts of concerns, these misconceptions can be addressed, once we know that they're there, can be addressed through graphicacy, through lots of images that we can't address necessarily through fieldwork. I've got next one, please, Anthony. This is an annotated drawing that I did this work with the children. They were asked to draw a river, and then, so I wasn't going to deface their wonderful drawings, I photocopied the drawings and they kept the originals and annotated them. And they're very, very revealing of the children's understanding. So they give some idea of what needs to be addressed, which can only be addressed, I would argue, through pictorial representation, through graphicacy. At the top left-hand corner in this one, if you went up a river to the start, you would bump into a rock or a hill. So obviously we need to look at images at the start. Below that, water can flow up the river, waves from wind and the sun. Say the 2 boats in the river, sailors pull water with them. The river can flow forwards or sideways. It's so revealing of the sorts of visualizations the children have of the river that can be addressed through images. And I'm sorry I'm making such a mess of this. Next one, please, Anthony. So addressing the idea of the river going through the urban areas, this is the River Aire in Leeds, and it's right in the city centre. And there's a combination of the river, there's the canal, there's canal basins, there's docks, lots of opportunities to introduce lots more river vocabulary and the images to go with to aid the children's visualization. A nice pictorial map, a different sort of map, a bridge to walk over. Lots, industry, lots of things. Then the next one, next image, another Google Earth, and in the Leeds example, a lovely sculpture of the same, another visualization, another pictorial representation of the spatial situation. The diagram at the bottom right there is one I've drawn quite a long while ago of how important I think it is for children to see everything from the horizontal perspective through all angles to the vertical perspective, so they can begin to visualize more completely the big picture, in this case, of a river. And the next one, I think it's my last, nearly my last one. Included this because I think these sort of images, I would ask the children, are these actually of a river? And the answer in every case is yes. It's the Lee Creek in River Thames in Essex. They encourage critical thinking. What's happening here? Is this part of a river? Now, obviously, the top left, the tide's gone out. It's the tidal part of the river. The idea that it is a river, but part of it can be tidal. The top right, why are some boats coming towards us and some going across the picture? And again, as it's the tidal estuary, as the tide's gone out, it's gone down, taken boats down the slope in the shallow bit, and then down the flow of the river in the more distant part. Lots of thinking got needed there to sort out the images. The bottom left-hand corner, we've got industry associated with the river, and the bottom right-hand one, marshlands, the Lee Marshes. So extension. Now, earlier on, I didn't actually read it to you, but you might have noticed I made some slightly sarcastic comment about diagrams, because so often diagrams are used for in teaching about rivers. But have children, have adults, have teachers got the necessary skills and experience to read and to understand and interpret these diagrams if they haven't seen all the photographs, the images, the pictorial, the graphicacy work? How can they possibly understand these diagrams? How can they visualize? How can they turn these into real landscapes? And again, they nearly always emphasize rivers going through countryside and not going through urban areas. So we need to teach the children through graphicacy experiences how to interpret diagrams, what they're actually representing. So unless they've seen the landscape for real or in pictorial representation, I don't think they can possibly visualize it from the use of these images, but they summarize things once they've got all these visualizations. So what's important, do pupils think that the water, the river that flows through the countryside is the same water that flows through the cities and the towns? How can we help them to realize this? And perhaps studying the water cycle could provide a vital link. So I'm a bit skeptical about using these diagrams without a huge amount of graphicacy work beforehand. So finally, I think teaching the big picture is essential for pupils, and the details supported through fieldwork. And this can be done through graphicacy. It enables pupils to develop an understanding of rivers and to provide a context or a scaffold for them to slot in their small pictures, their small experiences, including those acquired during fieldwork. But one thing I haven't mentioned at all, one very vital key concept for the understanding of rivers is so basic: water flows downhill, and in doing so shapes rural and urban environments with or without human intervention. Okay, I'm sorry that was a bit of a garbled thing, but we We got there.
Margaret, thank you so much. Thank you for your expertise. And as
Well,
people have been putting into the chat, there are lots of things that Margaret has written over the years in various publications, including Primary Geography, which you can read and have a look at the research that underpins some of these diagrams and drawings. Margaret, I just love the questions that you posed, the thinking that I've got in my head now, and the really importance of listening to pupils and what they say and trying to work with them on interpreting their diagrams, their drawings, their precious markings on paper. So yeah, stuff in there about misconceptions and everyday and technical language. And I just love that question: what happens when you get to the end of the river? And the fact that you have a wall, I just think that's priceless.
I can
Thank you.
understand, yeah, I can understand children who live near a reservoir thinking that, but I can't understand children who live a couple of 100 yards, a couple of 100 meters, literally from the mouth of the River Exe.
Thanks, Margaret. Really appreciate it. And there's one more slide, I think, that you had just to kind of finish off there about the water cycle, I think there.
No, I haven't got it. That's the final slide I've got, the diagrams on.
Yeah, yeah. And the problems and the complexity of those particular graphics. So, Margaret, wonderful work. Thank you so much for your time and your engagement in putting this together. Jen, so we're going to move swiftly on, if we can, to you, Jen, including children who may have special educational needs and disabilities in a rivers topic. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Joining you live from my actual classroom, so I do apologise if it's a bit echoey, because when there's no children in, there's quite a bit of space. So I am currently a Year 5 teacher, but for the past, I don't want to say how many years, I was a Year 4 teacher, and we had rivers as one of our topics. And we have a very high proportion of SEND children in our classes. So hopefully today I'm going to be able to share some ideas with you. Can I have the next slide, please? So there are two main things that I've discovered over the years teaching geography to a wide range of children, many with who are SEND children, and also a lot of this will count towards your EAL children as well, whom currently my class is 75% EAL. So these tips have been practiced, don't worry. So number one is that we can often fall back on scaffolding for children through their literacy abilities as opposed to their actual geography abilities. And I do often find my children with SEND needs can often flourish in geography lessons or art lessons, or, you know, when they're not struggling with their barriers to learning, which can often be literacy based or numeracy based. So it can be really easy when you have to plan for every single lesson, every single day, every single topic to, oh, I've had this scaffolding, it's worked for them in other lessons, to use it in geography. Hopefully I'm going to share with you some useful ways to scaffold to their geographical abilities and show you some ways of getting outputs that aren't writing. And the second thing I've learned is that whatever scaffolding you do add in for your SEND children, it will always help the entire class learn successfully. So actually, quite a lot of these will be whole class activities that we do that enable the SEND children to be successful, but actually it helps the entirety of your class be successful. Hopefully, anyway. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. So as I said, I'll give you some ideas, hopefully, to help your children be successful in their rivers learning. So when we are learning about mainly the river course and the features, we visit or revisit the same information in many different ways, including videos, pictures, making models, text, so that all children are able to understand what information you're giving them. And even though my school is in Reading, a lot of my children haven't actually seen a river before, which can be quite disconcerting. So a lot of what Margaret was actually talking about has really piqued some ideas for me as well. So next slide, please. So when we are looking at the journey of a river, the course of a river, and the features we might find, we will initially watch a video. It's quite an old one, I think, but it works. It follows the course of the River Severn from, I've put from mouth to source there, dearie me, from source to mouth, I do apologise. When we've done that, we then look at some pictures of different rivers at all three parts. We have some pictures of the upper course, middle course, lower course. We're looking at what features can you see, what's the same, and not specific geographical vocabulary all the time, but what colours do you notice are the same? Okay, if there's lots of browns here, there's not much grass, there's more rocks. A lot of textures, what textures can you see? What might you be able to hear at each part? Well, here the water's looking very fast, so you'd hear the roaring of the water. So which part of the river do we think that is? And there's lots of discussion about that, lots of working in groups, talk partners, allowing children to give their ideas to their ability. After we've done that, in groups, the children will then draw a river. I've put mouth to source again. I do apologise. It's been a week. And on a giant piece of flip chart paper, which you can see is the picture there. This can go over a lesson. The children love this activity. We, will have looked at lots of pictures, talked about the different features and the different parts of the course of the river. And then I will do an example, a model one, with the children helping me, telling me what I should include in my picture of a river. And then the children go off and have a go themselves in mixed ability pairs. You can just about see in the picture next to the felt tip pens, there's also a little word mat with a diagram to scaffold those children that might be like, oh, I remember it's this bendy bit, what's that called? And again, here, it's about the discussion the children are having with each other and saying, oh, okay, we're now at the middle course of the river. What are we going to find here? What should we draw a picture of here? I do get them to label. Again, only children that can write do the labeling, whereas the other children might be just telling or helping the children remember the vocabulary. We then display a few of these around the classroom as well, so that they're always available for the children to refer back to. And it's just a really fun lesson to teach, because the amount of engagement and discussion that is coming from your children is just fantastic. Next slide, please. And then we eventually move on to creating a river in groups. So here you can see an example that has been made. I would suggest checking the size of your tin trays first. Ours were a bit small, the rivers were a bit fiddly. I didn't check my maths there. But the children watch a video for how to create a river. We then give them some time to think about what materials they might want to show a different section. So you can see here they've gone and got some rocks for the upper course, so some pebbles for the rocks. They've got soil, they haven't put any vegetation down there. And then lower down, they'll have like fewer rocks, some grass, some flowers, which are supposed to be trees. This group actually put some rocks getting smaller as it went down the river to show the sediment and the material in the river becoming smaller as you go down, which I thought was really good. We do then elevate it and poke holes and pour water in it as well to show that it is a moving river, and to show that water moves downhill. Again, this is a really good activity for mixed ability groups, the discussion, the vocabulary that is going on, to hear all your children using the correct terms is really just a really good feeling and really exciting. And again, it allows those children who can't necessarily write about their work, or the children that aren't confident to speak out in a class setting, to do it in a small group. Those children that maybe don't have the fine motor skills to make the river park can do the collecting of some materials, giving ideas. So everybody contributes, everyone is able to do part of it. We then use this as a stimulus for some writing later on, which again helps those children that maybe are, you give them a blank page and they're terrified at the sight of a blank page and they can't write it. They then have a stimulus to write about the course of a river. Next slide, please, I think. Yes, so also the way we do our topic display boards in our school, we have, and the way we do our topics, we have a big question or two that we're trying to answer, and through that we then have smaller key learning points or questions that we follow. They are all displayed on our topic board, and we go on that journey across our board. with examples of children's work that they've done to answer that question, any diagrams we've used in class, any vocabulary we've used in class, any pictures, photographs of children, so that all their learning that they have done is available to them to scaffold them when they need it. And our children use our topic boards as well, which is really nice. Sometimes you make a display board and it's just a bit of wallpaper nobody looks at and it took you hours to laminate, and it is an active working board that children use to scaffold their learning. And again, this then means those children that need that scaffolding know where to find it as well. And obviously you can't do a rivers topic without field work. We're very lucky, we are not too far away from the Gilbert White's Field Study Centre, and they work with us to adapt the field work to our children's needs. So both any mobility needs, getting in and out of the river, but also the activities they do. So the measurements that they take can be adapted. And when you come back to class, some children might do a cross section of a river. Some children might put their data into a simpler bar graph, things like that, mixed ability groups. And they have a really fun time. The fact that they get in a river as well. We do a lot of observations and what can you hear, what can you see? It's not all taking measurements. I think that's really important and links into what Margaret was saying as well about the children's experience. You need to give them some of this experience that sometimes you think they might have. So I think that might be kind of it. Yeah. So just as I said, I do most of these activities with my whole class because, as all the research shows, revisiting in different ways the information helps it stick, and the children really enjoy it. And also then your SEND children don't feel like they're being singled out either, or sometimes that can happen. They're involved in the whole class learning at all times, and hopefully I've given you some helpful hints there to use for your class as well. Thank you.
Jen, appreciate your engagement and time and voice from the classroom. Thank you very much for staying late today. Thank you for giving us those ideas. And again, thank you everybody for the comments in the chat. Really helpful suggestions there for deepening, changing, adapting. That's what geography teachers are so good at, adapting the ideas that are being shared. So thank you so much, and do have a look at all the comments, the positive comments in the chat. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we'll move on and to a colleague of us at the university. I've been really fortunate on 2 occasions to go out with the local South East Rivers Trust with student teachers and children. That's the most important thing, to see what they thought about our local river, brook, stream, whatever you want to call it, but it's called the Beverley Brook. And Robyn, I'm going to pass over straight to you to give us some insights into what you at the Trust do. And just to say, everybody, if you don't know about your local Rivers Trust, it's worth Googling now and finding out where your local trust is, because they are a really wonderful group of people to tap into. So Robyn, thank you very much for joining us, and straight over to you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me along tonight. I'm very excited, and it's been great to hear from Jen and Margaret as well. It's really interesting, all the different perspectives. So I'm from the South East Rivers Trust. We're a charity that's been around for over 20 years, part of the wider National River Trust movement. So as Anthony said, do look up your local river trust, because usually we do provide education mainly around rivers for you to be able to get engaged with. So we started off as a small charity on one river, Wandle, but we've grown since then geographically, and in what we do, we now cover 12 different river catchments. So we either host or co-host them. So it's looking at the land around and working with partners as well as what is in the actual river itself. So our vision on the next slide is healthy, thriving rivers for people and wildlife in the southeast of England. And our mission is to deliver outstanding river ecosystem enhancements through science-based action, collaboration, education, and engagement. So we have our delivery team who do the physical work of rewiggling the rivers and adding in wood, those kind of things. We work on the catchment scale with lots of different partners, as I said, in the landscape around, and then also engaging the local community and connecting them with their local river and for them to care about it too. And next slide. So river education, why do we believe it matters? So I'll let you digest these different quotes that I've put in there, but the main reason is that you're not going to care about something if you don't know about it. And unfortunately, 97% of our rivers in England are on private land, so only 3% you have the right to be able to go view them. So really, really disconnected in the way that our society has moved into. We're even more further away from nature as what we were before. Also, the State of Rivers report has just been released by the Rivers Trust this week, and unfortunately, there is no stretch of river in England that has got good overall health. So it's a really, really big issue just now, but I think there's a massive thing what we can do to connect people to the local river for them to care about it into the future as well, which is really, really important. So we have been doing education and engaged over 25,000 pupils over the years already on their local rivers. And we're all talking about your local river specifically. So we go on to the next slide. Excellent. So why do we want to have our local river? So what we want to be able to connect them to a local river because we want their connection to be that emotive connection. They want to inherently value their local river and see it as beautiful, whatever that might be. And the main reason for this is placemaking and local understanding as well. Because if you are more connected to the local river, then you're more likely to look after it in the future. As I said as well, it supports lots of different pupils when they're out as well, which Jen had mentioned, because it includes a different variety of the way that you're able to teach and for them to engage in, and stuff that they might see in the classroom, they can relate to in the real life, or how that might differ as well to different rivers they may learn about in different countries, or the bigger rivers, they can then understand what their local river looks like. It being local too also overcomes that big problem of transport barriers, which I know can be an issue. So if you do live in an area where you can walk to your local river or get public transport to, then that's really exciting and important as well. And later on, I'll show you a couple of pictures of the different sites that we go on to say that it doesn't have to be a fantastic stretch of river, but any bit's really important that you can really get to know well. The picture on the right-hand side is our South London rivers, which I cover for our Project Kingfisher session. And the middle one is the Beverley Brook, which we'll be speaking about today. The one on the right-hand side is our River Wandle, and the left-hand side is the Hogsmill River. Those are both chalk streams, which are very important. There's only 200 of them in the whole wide world. It was believed that the Beverley Brook was once a chalk stream, but due to abstraction and it was sent underground many years ago, so it has disconnected from the chalk aquifer, and it's now no longer classed as a chalk stream. But if we go along to the next slide. So I thought I would talk you through some different example activities of ways that we use whatever is in front of us and to engage the children in their local rivers. So I've managed to compact my lesson into one tiny little backpack. So it's very portable that you can go out and have as least resources as possible, because the biggest resource is what's there in front of you and what is around you to use. So we start off with having an introduction to what a river is, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. So that's building their emotional connection to it and what they believe they like and don't like, and there's no judgment for that. And then we speak about the features of the river. So we go through what features of a river always has, like the source or the mouth, and we do actions along with that there to help them remember. And then we move into the human and the physical features. And this is something that a river might have, which encourages them to think that every river is different. So any stretch of the river you go to is going to look slightly differently. And we have a board that they can stick these cards into a human feature or a physical feature, and then we go through them. When we speak about the source as well, I always find this one really interesting, because the children always say that a river always starts in a mountain. But when I say, when we look around London, do you see the mountains? And they're like, no. So that's when you can go into the conversation of that. These rivers actually start from underground and come up in springs. And it starts that conversation of how the rivers are different that you learn about across the landscape as well. And then once we've gone over the features and introduced them to them, we go on a scavenger hunt to look for those features in real life. This just really embeds of what that learning they've had in class or this introduction is to then what they can look for in real life around them. And they tally up, they get them a two-sided sheet, one side with human features, one side with physical features, and they tally up to see what features are there. So in the urban areas, we usually have like quite a lot of built riverbanks. We might have some weirs. There could be some physical features of overhanging trees, the gravel. So all these different things that can come into it. And they technically are acting as scientists doing a survey, but scavenger hunt makes it seem more fun. Once we've gone over some river features, which is very much self-led as well, which is exploration, which is great for kids too, to explore the local area. We then go on to learn more about the wildlife in the area. So we can do a card game that they have to find facts about their animal, which could be done outside, but this can also be done in like a playground as well. But it's good to do it because not all the time you're going to see the wildlife on the river, especially when you're with 30 children at once. But to understand that these animals do live here all the time and you can come back and see them again. We then ask them to make their animals out of natural materials around them. So this then is a different way to embed that understanding of the wildlife, but also using the resources which is around you and having that connection to nature style. We can do 5 minutes of mindful moments of where they sit for the 5 minutes, and this then connects them with the different senses of what colours they can see, what sounds they can hear, taking that calm if they've been running around a lot and exploring to then really clock into what's around them. And you get some lovely comments back of the kids being like, oh, it's just go all the time in school, and it's really lovely to have this 5 minutes of silence. Or they might notice that the mallard duck has one little purple feather underneath its wing that I'd never seen before. So that's just understanding that it's really important to give them that time and that space to view everything around. We can speak about water saving games to understand the level of flow, which we can do simply by either a game that you take water out of the river with buckets, so you're physically abstracting, or even just with a simple rope that goes up and down, depending on what activity you do, to show the visual representation of the water level going up and down. And if it's lower, it's usually harder for the children to get underneath the rope when they're all pretending to be their animals and seeing that they need that water in the river to survive. And then I always love to finish off with promise sticks. So this is like the poo sticks, which Margaret mentioned earlier, which is great for understanding the flow of the river. But we add the extra one in of their intention. So they're going to promise with the stick to look after the river so they can come back in the future and for the wildlife to enjoy it. And they can decide what that promise might be, if it's to turn off their taps when cleaning their teeth, or to pick up a piece of litter, or just to come back down again to respect the environment. And you can speak about the journey of you dropping the stick into the river. It will flow all the way down into the Thames and into the ocean, and it's carrying your promise on that journey with it. So it's really understanding that connection of the water throughout the landscape. So it's a bit of fun, but it's that extra added intention of making a promise to the river too. So the green activities are more nature-based activities, and the blue ones are more of our curriculum-linked activities. And I think it's great to have the balance for both of them, because lots and lots of research shows that later in life, people have a lot of awareness of environmental behavior, environmental attitude, but they don't actually take those behaviors on. And the reason for that is because they're disconnected. So if you build this connection to nature and when they're younger, then they will carry on in the future. So it will lead to more pro-environmental behaviors later in life. So if we go on to the next slide. So these are just a couple of pictures that from different sessions. So you can see after they've collected and filled out their worksheet on learning all the facts about the mallard duck, they've made the mallard duck out of natural materials. This is one where we've done river dipping and categorizing the different creatures. The promise sticks with intentions, and the bottom left one, you can't see, but this is my favorite lesson, is that a year 4 group was coming down and I seen a kingfisher sitting on a branch over the bridge. So I ran up to them and said, hello, but be very, very quiet. All 30 of them came onto the bridge silently, seen the kingfisher, which then dove off into the water, caught a fish and ate it on the riverbank. And all of them were able to see it. And it was just an incredible moment for everyone. And they were silent for at least 5 minutes, just encapsulated by that moment. And I hope it's something that they will always remember from coming down, because it's really, really special. So yeah, it's just that these, which they would never have known or to look out for before, but it is possible for them to enjoy. If we go on to the next slide. Okay, so this is going to talk about our Beverley Brook. So our Beverley Brook is one of our London rivers, and I feel sorry for the Beverley Brook because it got sent underground at many, many years ago when the Wandle and the Hogsmill were used for the mills instead. So the upper course is actually like this here, lots of concrete channels. If you go to the next one, too, and it goes along lots of built riverbanks. It's really small, it's underground. There's a lot of pollution that goes into it as well, lots of misconnections. And then we go on to the next one, which where we come down to Wimbledon Common. So the top half is what it looked like before, really wide and really straight. And underneath is when we've done some river restoration work. So we've added in a berm and some plants, and you can see there already the riffles are coming in. There's a nice meander starting to form. So it's a completely different landscape. And we go to the next one. And this is another example in Richmond Park. Again, of the wide straight channel compared to afterwards, where you can see we've narrowed it, we've re-wiggled, put the meanders back in, lots of plants, lots more fish have came back. There's been a lot more wildlife around there since that's happened. And if we go to the last one, excellent. So this is actually a picture that you can see now when you stand on a bridge in Richmond Park. If you look upstream is what the river used to look like. Very straight and very wide, and you turn 180 degrees and look down the other side of where we've done the restoration work. So it's just a really good visual representation of how you can see how landscapes can change, how people have shaped the landscape in the past and why they've been able to do that, we did do that, and what we can do now to improve it and to bring it back to nature again. But we have done educational sessions on all these sites. So I want you to emphasize that it doesn't have to have all these wonderful features, which we do love to have, and it's great, but it can also have, like, for example, the bottom left-hand one. It's like an old gasworks that's behind. It's lots of concrete banks. It's very polluted, but we can still do a session there, and you can still talk about, well, what would you like the river to look like instead? What would make it better for these animals and wildlife to live in it? What would they rather have instead of this built riverbank? Maybe the riverside vegetation. Do we need to add some meanders in? So it can be that imagination of what you would love the river to look like in the future. But also, I think this also needs to be a celebration of the past and the cultural heritage of why the river was like that in the past. And that's why lots of people came along to it, and it's their local patch. So hopefully they'll come back and look after it in the future. And the last one is to show that the way that we are doing our sessions, these are some quotes from the children, that it's good to have the balance between both of them, that 80% of teachers have ranked the session as excellent with the link to curriculum, adding all the features and the wildlife, but also that the children's favourite activities has been those nature connection ones, which has been the mindful moments or the promise sticks, or making the creatures out of natural materials. And that's also really important for them to have those memories and connections of the river, and that hopefully embeds the learning of the overall session. But I think that's me at the end of it, but thank you very much. And if you have any questions, do let me know. And do reach out to your local Rivers Trust, because we are able to provide lots of different river education sessions to your local schools.
Robyn, wonderful and bang on time. Thank you so very much for sharing your expertise, and to have the expertise of yourself on site to point out all these things that I've certainly walked past in the past is just so valuable. So yeah, a warm recommendation to get out there with some people who know stuff, or to look on local websites, to look on blogs, to to look on blog sites, to look on the places that your Rivers Trust local to you actually work with, because there's such a lot going on that you perhaps don't realise, such a lot under your nose. So really, really good, and certainly a number of people on the call live very close to you, so therefore we'll be very interested in the sorts of work that you and the team have done. Lots of coordination goes on within a river catchment, doesn't it? I realised that myself in the last few years for sure. So lots of really positive comments in the chat as well. Thank you for all of those, and lots of really good resources shared as well. So certainly if you're watching this after, if you're watching the recording, recommendations to look at Digimap for schools. There's a river layer. There's a layer there which allows you to access images along source to mouth. So it might be worth having a look at Digimap for schools, the GeogLive as well. There's all sorts of comments mentioning certain books that you might want to look at as well. Anything from the organising committee that we think that should be mentioned at this stage, just as we pull to a close?
Just it's been noticeable that children's voices come out as being so valuable throughout all of these presentations, listening to the children's voice, but also getting their reactions. And I think that's a wonderful piece of reinforcement for the teacher, that what they're doing is making an impact.
Thank you, Steve. And just to remind you that Sophie's wonderful book resource, book recommendations, book suggestions is on the screen. So do scan that QR code, do have a look at that. And there's plenty more on the GA website as well to have a look at, plenty more to give you inspiration and insights into your geography curriculum. Do have a look at these links on the screen. Plenty of high quality publications as well for you to have a look at, and a whole suite of different CPD packs as well that you might want to bear in mind. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Robyn, to Sophie, and to Margaret, who started us off. Thank you to Tessa, and thank you particularly to the organising committee. It's really helpful to have you there in the background, to Kate, to Julia, to Steve, to Jen, and to Sophie. It's really good to have you and the rest of the EYPPC committee there, supporting us, engaging with us in the chat as well. Don't forget the GA conference, like I say, in Manchester in April, and our next session is fieldwork on the 24th of the 4th. Do send us a tweet at EYPPC_GA. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have any feedback as well. And do join us and have a look at our extensive archive as well. All sorts of different hour-long CPD sessions, as you can see on the screen. Lots of different themes that you might have missed over the last 2 years or so. So I'll say a fond farewell.